Well, hello and welcome back to our first lesson all about blockchains. Now, blockchain is one of those buzzwords that gets thrown around a lot, but often goes undefined or gets misunderstood. So let's fix that right now. A blockchain is a very simple thing. A blockchain is nothing more than a computer-based ledger of transactions, where information can be added but never edited or deleted. When you send a transaction on a blockchain, it is not sent to the receiver immediately. Instead, it is grouped together with all the other pending transactions and they're all executed at the same time. This group of transactions is called a block. On the Bitcoin network, one block of transactions is executed every 10 minutes. Once executed, that block of transactions is added to the ledger in order of the first block to the last block. So the most recent block is added to all the other blocks, which forms a chain, hence the name blockchain. The contents of each block are quite simple. You have an account number, and then some data. Now, for blockchains to be of any use to us, that data needs to represent something in the real world, such as the amount of Bitcoin you own, the amount of car parts in a shipping container, or it could even be the text of a document, such as a book or a legal or healthcare document. So you see, whilst blockchains can be used to store and transfer financial assets, such as cryptocurrencies, they can also be used to manage non-financial data as well. As long as there is a need to assign some data to individual accounts, or tracking numbers if you will, and keep a record of it, then blockchains can be used. So blockchains are really nothing more than an asset and information management system. Now, there are significant and important differences between the regular databases that the majority of the world's data is stored on and blockchains. Let's discuss the differences first, and then we'll learn about the advantages we gain from those differences. In a regular database, used by banks and governments to manage assets and information, there are many different types of users. You can have a single user account, like you and me, who can only interact with the data that's assigned to our own specific account. Then you can have more powerful users, such as bank employees, who can access multiple accounts to read and edit information. In regular databases, there is usually even a super user account type, who can access and edit every piece of information that a database contains. When regular databases get hacked and money or information gets stolen, often it is because the hackers have managed to gain control of these super user accounts. Now in a blockchain, only one person can control your account. Nobody else is able to access your account unless for some reason you give them access. Sadly, this doesn't mean that blockchain-based assets can't be stolen. They can. But when this happens, it is always because the account holder has been tricked into revealing their password, or they've been deceived into sending their assets to a scammer. It is impossible for a hacker to gain some kind of super user level of control over a blockchain in the same way as they can a regular database and take control of all the contents of that blockchain. Now, how else are blockchains different? Well, in a normal database, there are a few different ways you can interact with data. You can add data to a database, as shown here. But you can also delete information from a database if you wanted to. Also, you can edit existing information in a database and change it. So if a hacker got super user access to a database of sensitive information, they could create a lot of problems by adding false records or by deleting or changing legitimate records. Or if your bank made a change to their computer programs which contained a bug, then information in the database might be edited or deleted by mistake. These types of issues arise often in complicated systems that use regular style databases. As we discussed earlier, in a blockchain, information can only ever be added. It can never be edited or deleted. Once information is written into a block on a blockchain, it is impossible for it ever to be changed afterwards. And if you're wondering how that's the case, I'll explain in a later lesson. So that's it. That's a blockchain. It's just a different sort of database where the access to information is much more controlled than a regular database and where data is only ever added. So what are the advantages of blockchains over regular databases? Well, number one, as each of your transactions in the blockchain can only ever have been made by you, then your information in the blockchain is always correct. Nobody else has access to make mistakes or do anything illicit unless you give them your password. Number two, in a regular database, there are other users that have permissions over your account, such as bank employees. Therefore, if you try to make a transaction the bank doesn't like, they can stop that transfer from happening. For example, if I were to try to send money to a relative that just happened to live in Iran or Zimbabwe, both countries which are under international sanctions, then the bank would simply not let me. Even if my relative was a perfectly innocent, law-abiding person and really needed the money, I would be prevented from sending my money to my relative because the bank has such a level of control over my bank account. However, in a blockchain, only I control my account. So if I transfer, say, Bitcoin to you, then nobody can stop that transfer, as nobody else has any sort of control over my account. A blockchain transaction can simply not be stopped. Now, as only you or I can control our accounts on a blockchain, it also means that a blockchain transaction is one way. If you send a transfer to the wrong person, then you cannot reverse it or claim it back. In the case of Bitcoin, if I were to send some Bitcoin to you, then once it arrived in your account, remember that you and only you control that account. Therefore, there is no way for any third party or automatic process to send those Bitcoins back to me if I change my mind about that transfer. So let's recap. Blockchains are different from regular databases as only one person has control over one account and information is only ever added. It is never edited or deleted. Blockchain transactions cannot be reversed once you have made them, and a blockchain transaction cannot be stopped by anyone. Well, in fact, the only way you could possibly stop a blockchain transaction moving from person A to person B is if you shut down the computer system that the blockchain software was running on before the transaction had finished. And in order to stop people from doing just this and shutting down a blockchain to stop transactions, blockchains were designed to be decentralized. Now, what is decentralization, you may ask? Well, we will cover that in the very next lesson. But for now, that's it for this lesson. Now, as always, if anything is a little confusing to you at this point, that's quite all right. That is to be expected. These concepts are really quite straightforward, but they do take a little getting used to at first. If anything is unclear, please go back and re-watch this lesson again, and I promise you things will become clearer. And you can always reach out with any questions you may have. Okay, well, that's it for this lesson. Thanks once more for your time, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.